this point, hi everybody, welcome. Good to see you. Nice to be here with you on this lovely hump day. Wednesdays are one of my favorite days of the week, largely because, as many of you may or may not know, being a traveling stand up comedian most of my life, even before my adult life, um, I spent a good deal of time on the road and doing shows. And in doing so, Wednesday was sort of my Monday. Yeah. Yeah. When most people are halfway through their week, mine was sort of Wednesdays were kind of my Sunday actually, because Thursday would be your first night gig, and mostly you travel on Wednesday and do like radio or some sort of promo on Thursday morning. So it was kind of the Monday of your week. Hi there, everybody. Good to see you. Let's see who's in here. Good to see you. Good morning, Gail. Richard. Good to see you. Soft Dreams. Hi. How are you? I am Shailene. Good to see you. Cosmic Rose. Hi. Hey, John. Oh, you can hear me? You should be able to hear me now. Good to hear. Good to be heard, Ryan. Thanks. Hi there. Lost track of how many times I crossed the Mississippi when my daughter was in school in Iowa City. Funny how it became normal. That's true, Phil. I'm very fluffy today. Yeah. Yeah. I had time to get up and do my hair, and I've been ponytailing it so much lately that it felt like cheating. And also, I did a hair treatment, like a leave-in conditioner kind of a thing, and it took longer than I thought this morning to do, so I didn't have time to put in like mousse and the like. So this is just untamed fluff. So there's some static issues that I may have to deal with. If I lean too closely to the microphone, I may get electrocuted and die. So, do I have a morning fluffer? I refuse to answer on the grounds that it may incriminate someone. I'm quiet. Let's see. Let's turn this guy up. See if that helps you out a little bit. It shouldn't be up too loud. There you go. It's my favorite shirt as well. I have 3 of them. I bought 3 of the exact same shirt so that when I'm doing stand up on a weekend, I can wear basically the same outfit all weekend, and if I want to cut a show together, for video purposes from the sets, I look the same. So they all look like one show. Yes. It's bedhead. It says just past bedhead, but yes. Glitchy audio, really? That's strange. Yeah, it does look longer. And this is when it's fluffier. So if I straighten it, it's even longer, but this is its natural wave. Thanks. I have a very naturally very Charlie's Angels kind of a do. I just turn my head upside down, blow dry it on with a cool setting, and then turn my head right back up, and this is what it looks like, pretty much. Can't see what it says under toxic. It says I love toxic waste. This is my favorite shirt. It's from the movie Real Genius. It's the original one in the movie is a ring shirt, and I have one. I have an original version of it, but because of whoever made it, it's so excuse me, it's so cheaply made that the shirt shrank, but the rings shrank, but the shirt didn't. So over time, it's choking me to death and squeezing my arms. Although my arms have gotten bigger, in all fairness, the shirt has gotten drapey. So I don't know quite what to do, what the answer is. If you ever get your hair cut, please think about donating to Wigs for Kids. Oh, I certainly will. YouTube has been very quiet, so Twitch is where I cast from. Yeah, I understand that. There's a lot of people sort of pulling back. I think probably, again, this is one of the sort of statistical aspects of live streaming and the like, is that when you talk about people streaming, and I've been watching a lot of videos about this lately, where people, because I'm always trying to keep up with the latest technology as far as streaming goes. And usually it takes me a while before I make the leap over, like Streamlabs or whatever. I may end up, I'm building currently an OBS by itself version of the show where I don't have to use Streamlabs, and I can switch over to Stream Elements or one of the other sources if need be, because of some limitations of the stuff. And of course, because some people have issues with the company. I haven't dived too deeply into it, but it's not a huge thing. but it might be a thing. So I always prepare kind of a little ways out, and lately, as I've been watching videos about streaming and how to do better at it, there's been a lot of talk. Hype train, the level 2 hype train already starting. Look at that. Don't forget to subscribe, by the way. On Twitch, you kind of have to resubscribe if you've forgotten. And if you can't afford to, that's fine. It's the holidays. But if you can help out, that'd be lovely. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers on there. It's difficult because it's always every month it drops back. And today, of course, being the firstage, it'll a lot of it will go away. A lot of people's subscriptions will vanish. So if you haven't subscribed and you want to, and you did and you forgot, you can check and see and whatever, and it should show you whether you're subscribed or not. But if you're not, please think about doing it. Anyways, whenever I look at the statistics about stuff, especially lately, like if there's one area where you guys know, I have like a chip on my shoulder that's not a lovely kitten. Thank you, Artslyn. Artsy Lynn, bless you. If there's one area where I have a legit chip on my shoulder about the news and people's just way of conversing about shifts, changes, news stories, everything from climate change to election policy to income inequality to all these issues that people want to discuss, the over-reliance on percentage as a cudgel to get their point across, and then not using the regular numbers associated with it to show that they're right, and the percentage change reflects a material change that is significant, that is equally significant. On a lower end of that, there's been a lot of talk lately about live streamers on Twitch and on YouTube in particular, that lots of people have been dropping off of live streaming. Lots of people have been, no longer live streaming and whatnot. And most of it, I think, on the Twitch side traces back to that leak that came out that shows that like only 0.00056% of Twitchers make any kind of reasonable income, which is, seems refined and crazy, except for how long it takes you to just make partner based on the standard. So a lot of people will just give up well before then, or never meet that standard, or they constantly get reset back. Because you have to go I forget what it was now, because it's been a while since I covered it, but it seemed an insurmountable amount of time online. You had to get 70 people in your chat for 30 days in a row, shit like that, which is really hard. And after that 30 days, if you don't do it, it resets back basically to zero. And so all these people are just kind of like, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back every month, trying to get to a point where they can make money on Twitch, if indeed they're not interesting, or they can't garner an audience, or they don't promote, or their programming is no different than anybody else's, so they're not going to stand out. All the reasons why stuff fails, added on top of the normal difficulty that the website has to put in place to just kind of weed out, kind of the barnacling on. And there's some sort of statistic that like 1 billion hours of YouTube content is loaded every day. Like, just lunacy, right? The volume. But considering it's worldwide and all this kind of stuff, it's a reasonable number after a while. I'm responsible for a chunk of that. So when they talk about a lot of people stopping, like 20% of Twitch streamers or 12% of YouTube streamers have dropped the service and blah, blah, blah. That's within the normal realm of reality in general, just the fail rate of any business or the fail rate of any adventure, or just how many kids started that and their parents stopped them. How many adults started it and realized they're appealing to, what they're talking about has a younger audience, and there's other people who are already ahead of them and they have to compete with that. And so they drop off. It's a world of hobbyists. And in the world of hobbyists, a lot of people play guitar as a hobby. Look at the number of people who make a living as a touring musician, right? It's a finer and finer and finer detail. So, my alarm's going off. Hold on. Let's see what that is. Hold on. I think that's my phone or yours, babe? Okay. All right. Just making sure. That was my girl's phone. I was confused for a second there. Sorry about that. Anyways, so point I was trying to make is that it sounds horrifying and very discouraging if you look at it from the point of, oh my God, look at how many people give up. Look at how many people fail and fall back. And in reality, it's not that different from most people who try on a shirt at fucking H&M and then put it back on the hanger. That's not a fail rate. I mean, I suppose it is from a sales point of view if you're at H&M, but if it doesn't fit, then that shouldn't qualify as a fail, right? So there's so much in, and this is why many of you know I reject the idea of rejection being the biggest problem in acting specifically, because in none of the auditions I had, especially early on in the first 2 decades of my, well, decade and a half, let's say, of my acting career, from the time I was 16 when I got my first job, like the year before when I'd been auditioning and auditioning and auditioning and auditioning, to the point where I got Talk Soup and was sort of a known entity insofar as I was coming in. In those 16 years, I heard so much conversation amongst the people that I was around, who we were equally unknown, all of us, that there was so much rejection in the thing. I'm like, how can they reject you? They don't frigging know you. You can't be rejected. There's dozens of reasons why on any given audition day, they could go one direction or another. There's, the project can come and go. H&M's like a store. It's just like Forever 21 or whatever. It's just say Target, just fill in the gap as far as trying on clothes. Level 5 hype train. Thank you guys so much for, I appreciate that you, you know, on mornings like this, we can have longer conversations about this type of stuff. But when it comes to, you know, the idea that you're being rejected or that the system or Hollywood is against you and so many people have been thrown under the bus by Hollywood, when in reality, laziness and lack of drive and all kinds of life issues cause the scattering of careers far more than some sort of personal vendetta or some sort of, you know, you'll never work in this town again bullshit that everybody has, is this illusion about the industry. It's mostly a volume problem and the fact that most people don't know to stand out. And that I learned very early on, and bless you, Keanu Reeves, from an e-commerce site considers 2 to 4% conversion rate to be great. Yes, right. If you can turn over 2 to 4% of the people that are selling, that's right, Rob. That's amazing. Which, I mean, the fail rate on the internals on that is enormous comparatively. Most people wouldn't put up with that. If you went 98% of my days this year are going to be worthless, I mean, you'd just be depressed all the time. But that's kind of the you know, that it's an extraordinary version of that business model idea, but that's it. So somebody's asking me, Katie's saying, how was there anything you auditioned for you really wish you'd gotten the part for? Yeah, you know, it wasn't so much the part. I auditioned to be Spider-Man in like 1991, and then the project just went away. And this was sort of the seed. Thanks for bringing that up, because it was sort of the seed of, you know, my feelings about, like, the whole film went away. I didn't just lose that job because I was in the last 12 people they were making the decision before the movie went away, which is what my agent said. And we'd been through the audition process, so I knew I was going from rooms that were less and less full during that audition process. It's like 89, 90, actually. And then the project was supposed to be shot in 91. And it went away, and everybody else was like, oh, God, it's so... And I remember going, I didn't even have the job yet. Why would I be upset about that? I mean, I wanted to do it, but I wouldn't take it personally. The director lost their goddamn job. They were already on board. The producers were counting on doing the Spider-Man movie. You know what I mean? There were a bunch of people who were already working on that thing when it fell apart. They were already paying bills in their head next year based on that money, and I was not one of them. So to complain about it or freak out just seems absurd. But if you listen to the statistics of who makes it, and who doesn't, and all those kind of things, it's easy to recognize how people can be lulled into this false sense of insecurity. I mean, and imagine the ego it takes to take not getting an acting job when you know hundreds of other people are auditioning for it. And you know that sometimes, it can be a twist of fate that actually lines up what was going on. When the year I got Talk Soup, 5,000 people auditioned for that job. And yes, I did beat 5,000 applicants for a job. But I might not have, except for the fact that they'd seen all these people and none of them were satisfactory. It wasn't who they wanted. I'll get to the Keanu thing in a second. They got to I'd even cut my hair for that, for the audition the year before. And the casting person said, we haven't seen Hal Sparks this year. We should bring him back in. Way late in the process. And I just nailed it and walked out the door. Hal would be a great Doc Ock in Spider-Man. I agree. Yeah. So with Keanu, I came out of high school, and in the 90s, I had really long hair like this. This is what I looked like, except younger and prettier. Early part of the 90s, which one would think with movies like Airheads being made and stuff like that, it would give me a jump on, those kind of roles, grunge being a thing, that there would be more roles like that. And indeed, I did get a part in a pilot called Reality Check, where I was like the outside edge of the ensemble, but I was going to be a recurring, which would have been lovely, with Hilary Swank and other folks in it. And there's a scene where I hit on her at a party as a complete airhead, long hair dude, and she's like, "Ooh, don't like you." That we had together, Hillary and I. That was terrific and funny, and they let me improv. And it was Marta Kaufman and David Crane, who did Dream On and Friends. Great people. And they had another pilot that year. Some of you may know. It was called Friends. So they did that one instead. But I did, in fact, get a job sort of because of the long hair look. And I remember at the time being a little frustrated at the stuff that Keanu Reeves was getting, because his acting at the time, and some would argue still, is not really all that terrific. And I love the guy. Don't get me wrong. But early in the 90s, it just seemed like he got tapped as a young man, and they were just all in. And I was very frustrated as somebody who had done a decent amount of serious acting and was like, I don't know that we're that far off in look. Why is it, at least I should get the stuff he's turning down, there was some of that. And then I realized that envy is poison, that I was jealous essentially, and that's worthless as an emotion. And he's a lovely guy. And he's a good person. So I was like, all right, if I wasn't upset about this, how could I change my own opinion about this? It has nothing to do with him. I've never met the guy. And I realized that it wasn't about what I was doing wrong. It was about what he was doing right, and what the people around him were doing right. And effectively, it was that my agents at that point had been very much like personal friends in my attitude towards them and myself. They were very, very personal, and yet sort of ineffective. And I realized that most of Keanu Reeves' representation, but for, I suppose, maybe his manager or something, didn't even see him as a human being. They just looked at him and dollar signs appeared in their eyes, like a dog looking at a person who turns into a pork chop in an old Warner Brothers cartoon. And I was like, all right, I think I need to get agents who are like that. Because rather than waste my time being a jealous mess, and I also saw that, by the way, in people around me. I hadn't taken an acting class since high school when I was out in LA. And there is an inside track in LA to certain jobs. It won't get you the top jobs, but it'll guarantee you some baseline jobs, in that you study with, 3 or 4 specific acting coaches. And they, through friendship or payola or some combination of the two, I suppose, have relationships with the casting directors, and they kind of create this little, I got this kid in my class who's good for this thing. I got this woman in my class who's good for this thing. And they kind of keep the casting people informed, and then they put on showcases, and the casting people come to that because they have a good personal relationship with that person. And so being in one of these top 4 classes will kind of shove you to the front of the line, and it costs money, but it ends up being an investment in your career. It's certainly cheaper than a college degree. So, at one point I was like, all right, maybe that's what I need to do, because I was in my sketch group and I wasn't doing a bunch of stand-up at the time, so I didn't really have some way to stand out on my own. And I went and I audited a couple of classes. Some of you may know the Jeff Goldblum story, where I went and audited a class where he was guest teaching, and it was the weirdest fucking thing. He just wouldn't stop moving while you were acting. Out of your peripheral vision, he's doing all this stuff, and you're like, dude, sit fucking still. I already know you're there. It's weird. Anyways, so he's while you're acting, he's quietly also acting. It was so weird. Anyways, I went to this one class, and they were talking about, I don't know how the conversation started because I kind of walked in the middle of it, but they were talking about how it was ridiculous that Jack Nicholson was paid $10 million to be in Batman, the original Batman. That it was absurd. No actor should get that amount of money. And these are actors arguing this. And I'm like, what the fuck? Why would you even make that argument? Are you out of your mind? You're arguing that you should make less in your chosen career after you've been in it for 40 goddamn years and had umpteen hits or something. Anyways, they were really saying this. And they were like, he was good, but he wasn't that great. And it was $10 million. And I was, I'll tell, some people have already heard the Colin Farrell story, but I'll tell it again if it applies. So I was sitting there listening to them, and I went, he's not getting paid for acting in Batman. And they went, what? He's getting paid for the people he brings into the theater. He's not working the factory floor anymore. He's mid-management or upper management. He gets profit sharing, effectively. But the problem is, in making a Batman movie, which we now know is a moneymaker for a period of time anyways, when they made that one, it was no guarantee. As a matter of fact, it wasn't a guarantee that it would be a success until Jack Nicholson was attached to it. That was the only one, like, oh my God, Jack Nicholson is the Joker. Holy shit, that's what drove everybody to the theater. Michael Keaton, fantastic Batman, not my point. Overall, though, very much in line with the kind of, with like sort of the 1960s Batman. In line with like, kind of the Dick Tracy movie and that kind of stuff. It was a very, like, odd era in superhero movies. So, my argument to them was, he's not paid for the acting that was required. Although I would argue that when you're wearing that much facial makeup and you're having to do all that stuff, it's way fucking harder than As Good as It Gets. Sorry. It's harder to act in a movie like Batman than it is to act in As Good as It Gets. It's a harder acting job to turn in a real performance. To be present, to be real when you're wearing a big rubber suit or you've got like fake grin scars on your face and you've got green hair and shit. It's just hard. It is. That's work. And I will say that to like, I'm sorry. And some people will think this is ego, but I could skate through, any major drama you put in front of me. The only time it's work is major drama where you're wearing a big foam suit on a green screen. Sorry. It's just true. So, but beyond that, Jack Nicholson was not being paid specifically for his acting, which was spectacular and a lot of fun, and that whole, like, all of his little affectations that he threw in there. This town needs an enema, like all that stuff. and his timing was fantastic. But what he was paid beforehand for was that, oh shit, Jack Nicholson's going to be the Joker. Everybody wanted to see it. Because of his career beforehand, because of all the fine work he had done leading up to that point. Because of Chinatown and any number of and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and the work that had given him the accolades necessary, friggin' like everything he'd done leading up to that point. That's what he gets paid for. I watched The Blacklist, enjoyed James Spader. Yeah, he's very good. I just wish he's one of those guys that, reason number 7,592 why I don't drink. But another, it's called clout. Good point, V. Gabriel. Easy Rider, Shining, absolutely. The Shining alone, right. Was being in 12th Night at all stressful for you? No, it was not. It was just work. It was just like focused work. It was, it was kung fu. It was energy and time. So Witches of Eastwick is so good. Few Good Men, yeah, all that, which I think was after. Yeah. So point being is that these folks were arguing that he shouldn't be making that kind of money. And these folks were assholes. That's just dumb. The idea that the producers of a film, and not the writer, the director, and the stars, should be the only ones that take home the profit aspect of it, or that they're singularly responsible for the asses in seats, is just ridiculous. And they were making this case. So early on, I was like, all right, I'm competing with a bunch of people who are not treating this as a business. And I'm also falling into a habitual behavior that young actors and new actors fall into, which is this jealousy of people who have already made it, and the belief that they don't really deserve the success that they've gotten. And it's like the old joke, like how many lead guitarists does it take to screw in a light bulb? 1, or like 100, 1 to do it, and 99 to say they could have done it better, and that wasn't fast enough. And is that, whatever. Like if you change modality, it'd be a lot more interesting. And there's 99 different versions of whatever that is. But the point being is that it's all about jealousy and disdain, envy. And so to avoid those behaviors in myself, which I saw as a herd, I think since then, that's why I've had this kind of aversion to this idea that, like, statistically, most stand-ups don't make it. Statistically, only 2% of actors, like, yeah, well, statistically, 65% quit. They're not driven out. They're not, destroyed by the industry or stiff-armed because they're too creative. They quit. And so they shouldn't even be part of the conversation in that regard. It's like my thing about stand-up. Don't tell me you've tried stand-up. You either do stand-up or you don't do stand-up. No one has ever tried stand-up. If you tried it, you weren't doing it. You tried standing on a stage telling jokes. That's not trying stand-up. You either do stand-up or you quit stand-up. Choppy stream? That's weird. Let's see. On YouTube. You have a wee bit of German in you, perhaps? Just curious. I do, actually. Well, the Celts that I'm derivative of made their way up through Germany and France, so through that way. I'm being censored? Is that it? YouTube went out for a moment. That might be them. I don't know that if it's affecting any. I'm fine on. Okay, it might be service elsewhere. So whenever I look at somebody who tells me that, like only 2% of a group, if you're starting, most restaurants fail in the first 6 weeks. Well, a lot of people start restaurants as a way to hide money or as vanity projects. So fucking what? You are not a statistic. And anybody who tells you that you are statistically, unless it's something like, 100% of people who try to fly using only their arms off a cliff hit the ground rather hard. Like, unless it's that, it's meaningless. Because most of the people that succeed are people who look at the, I used to make this joke that the thing you need to make it as a stand-up early on, the two crucial characteristics that you need to have are arrogance and stupidity. You need them desperately. Arrogance and stupidity. Without them, you will never be a stand-up. True facts stated. Why is that? Because confidence is something that is born out of practice and awareness of skill. You know you can do something. You know you can win a fight because you've had a lot of them and you've studied martial arts for a long time, or you've been a boxer for a long time, and you know that, right? That's confidence. And as a singer, for example, or even as an actor, you can build that confidence in a class. You can go to class, you can go to acting class, do scene after scene after scene, and eventually your teacher and the other students will tell you that, yeah, you've got it. You can go audition for a real professional job because you've got the skills, you can draw up the emotions, you can reference it, you can read a script, you can hit your mark and bark, as I like to say. And you know that you can accomplish the job. You can be confident leaving your acting class that you can act. Singing, you can stand in a room with a coach or driving in your car for a long time and eventually using your own ear and the ears of a couple other people, know that you're hitting the notes and you can sing. Whether or not you grow into the performer you're going to be, you can do that on stage, but you can be confident that you know the words of the song and you can hit the notes, right? That's measurable. Stand-up, you can only do on stage. You can only do through performance. And you will never know who you are unless you soldier through all the early times where you might suck, or you're trying, audiences are different and you have to decide the difference between, is it the audience? Is it me? Is it me? It's the audience. It's always me. I will always take it as me, even if it's the audience, so that way I can get better. All those things. And I will solve for the problem that's real, not solve for the problem that I think I have. They didn't like me. No, this is the late show on Friday. They always are quiet. Oh, I see. So, okay, how do I deal with a late show audience that's quiet? Can I develop a skill that allows me to take whatever the bad show is of any weekend? When you do stand-up, if anybody ever tries this, you'll know there's one night of the weekend when you do stand-up that one of the shows, either the early show or the late show, depending on work schedules in the town you're in or the general tide of the audiences that come to the shows, one of those shows is going to be more work than the rest of them. And if you take it personally, you'll come up with all the wrong solutions. You'll be all flop sweaty. You'll think the show is going poorly. The audience doesn't give a shit. They're just more relaxed or sitting back. Yes, musicians know this too. So you'll solve the wrong problem. You'll have a difficult audience and you'll think it's you when it ain't. Or you won't know that it's, normally the Saturday show, the first show is kick ass. Nobody fails. And then you stink up the place and you're like, this must be the bad show for this town. And if you don't ask anybody, and you'll solve for the wrong problem. You'll say, oh, the audience just sucked. And you won't fix your shit. I've always believed in solving the real problem in front of you. And because I'm a stand-up and been a stand-up my whole life, I kind of look through all the other arts through that lens. That you take 100% responsibility for all the challenges or problems that are your own and you can fix. And then any other problem or challenge that aren't your own and that you can't fix, you adapt to bring the best show to that circumstance. You don't bitch about it. You don't go, oh, fuck, right. Every time I play, Philly, the Friday late show is going to be quiet and work, and everybody says it. Thanks, Mark. Yeah. So yeah, late show Saturday is usually a crazy audience. That's true in some places, not always. So that's what I mean. You have to pay attention town to town. You gotta, up and down the dial. And for KRP lovers, you must solve the problem that's really in front of you, not the problem that you are being told necessarily either. You gotta recognize, as much as you can, the solvable parts that you have. And the same thing was true of acting. And then, in the early 90s, especially for me, as the Sisyphus years, where I would, get something and then it would go away. And then it would, I'd get something, somebody said, what do you think of Adam Driver's stand-up in Annette? That was not stand-up. That's not stand-up. Someone playing stand-up in a movie is not and will never be stand-up. That is an actor doing a monologue in a movie in front of extras. That's not stand-up. Just for the record. So, just a clarification. You know what I mean? But how comics got famous by being overweight, but we're told they would only succeed if they keep gaining more weight, just gain more laughs. Well, heavy comics get painted into a corner of their own making. I think you're playing a town, there's a big game on the next day. Your early show is probably going to suffer for the folks who are going to tailgate the next day. No question. A lot of times I get booked on a weekend when nobody else wants to do it because I like to work, where there's a big game that weekend and they're like, yeah, the audiences are going to be soft. Sometimes you don't find that out until later. I don't mind doing it if I know. But if I don't know, the club, like years ago, learned this, that the club will hold the numbers against you and go, well, the last time you were here, you didn't do that well. And you're like, yeah, you booked me on the weekend when everybody in town goes to the playoffs. Even Dave Chappelle and Nutty Professor. Yes, even Dave Chappelle and Nutty Professor. Dave Chappelle is a stand-up when Dave Chappelle does stand-up. When he's doing lines in a movie for an audience that is, by the way, quiet and laughing like this so they can get his lines, that's not stand-up. How does your son have a good sense of humor? He's developing one. He's funny, and he knows what funny is, but there's certain linguistic jokes that he's getting better at as he gets older. Is it harder for you to be funny because you're good looking? I'm not that good looking. I'm decently good looking. I am not. That's sort of Jesselnick's challenge. I don't know. Always have a difficult time. Nikki Glazer, I guess, has some of that problem as a pretty woman. To some degree, but those people end up being packaged into like they can only tell certain kinds of jokes, it seems. So it's another conversation for another time. But that brings us to what I tweeted about this morning with this article. Now, before I start chatting about this, how get the equipment, can't keep up with you, it makes you go mute now and then when you really get going. Just an observation, I certainly could be. It's not any of my gear. It's something in YouTube or something. If you watch it back later, it might be better or something. Frozen on Twitch, that's strange. Hold on. I'm going to do a check of my interwebs. Let's see. Yeah, my internet is totally fine right now. So if anything is off anywhere, it might be your local stuff. It might be something going on at YouTube. Yeah, I have 330 megabits per second upload. It's okay. It's not, yes, it's not me. It might be that. Yeah, it's a YouTube thing, I think. Twitch is fine. Yeah. I mean, they might be doing all kinds of stuff. We'll see. Because some people are saying it's fine where they are, and other people are saying YouTube's being weird. It's not coming from my end. Yeah. So this was what now you guys know I have a problem with Raw Story because they have this weird like atheist chip on their shoulder that they just need to shit on religious people nonstop. It's kind of a dick move. They do it constantly. And they do it kind of intentionally cruelly, you know. And I've called them out on it and gotten into little minor, Twitter feuds with some of the writers about it in the past. But the same thing is true with the manipulation of, trying to scare you through motivation. The fear is that it on their part is that if they can't make you afraid, if they can't make you petrified, you won't be motivated. So, yes, real religious people can take it. Indeed. I mean, it's just an obvious issue that they have. I call them out more for that blind spot on their own bias. Yeah. But, and they're not just talking about evangelicals at all. I mean, they literally are, it borders on Ayn Randian. Ayn Rand believed that anyone who wasn't an atheist was, in her words, mentally retarded. This was her phrase. And Raw Story, as lefty and progressive as they allege to be, are as Ayn Randian about spiritual belief as anyone. Brian says, "Is there a casting couch?" No, there is not. So if there was in 1982 or earlier, I couldn't tell you. But don't get me wrong, I had a male casting director make obvious passes at me and some of my male friends when I was in high school in Chicago. He's dead now. Not by anything we did, allegedly. But that existed, but it didn't change the nature of, I mean, I never got cast in any of those things, so maybe there was one. Anyways, we've talked about that before. So this story, what voter suppression looks like. Rejected ballot requests up 400% after new Georgia voting law. Dear God. Igor at Salon is right. 400%. What a shocking and horrible. 400% this year from last year. Now, I know what you're thinking. Was there an election this year? Yeah, there was a municipal election. Now, is the same number of humans out of 1,000 a larger percentage than the same number of humans out of 400? Yeah. It is. So when you have less people voting in an election and you have the same exact number of people who have rejected ballots in general, the percentage number will be way higher when fewer people vote. When you have a lot more people voting, the number gets way smaller. This is also how we explained, the whole. This is the opposite version of what Giuliani and Mike Lindell and all those people are talking about when they're like, the rejection by signature was down to 2%. Well, that's because the number of people who voted by mail was way fucking up, and the same number of people with shaky handwriting tried to fill out their, absentee ballot applications and got their signatures thrown out. Same number of fucking people. 1-to-1, human beings, same number. Larger number of people want absentee ballots. The number of people who get rejected is going to be a smaller percentage of that larger number, right? In a normal year, that number is very small, and so therefore a larger percentage is rejected because of that very reason. This is exactly why we call bullshit on what Giuliani said in Michigan, what he said in Pennsylvania, what Lindell has talked about in all these fucking states, and so the exact same thing has to be true if we're going to be consistent about bullshit stories like this about the Georgia law. Now, I know what you're thinking. How? Have you read SB 202, the Georgia voting law? Yes. I still have like 4 pages left in it, but I'm almost all the way through it. And most of the stuff that at the tail end is stuff that I've already read that it's sort of descriptives about, but I'm going through the actual bill itself. Hold on one second, I'll show you something. as I was going through the bill, as I was talking about it, I was reviewing it to be read. This would be, I'm using the New York Times text of the bill to do that. I was grabbing screenshots as I went along of certain parts of it that stood out to me as concerning, and certain parts of it that I saw a lot of people making really egregious, pearl clutching claims about that are really kind of bullshit. So, one of the ones was, okay, so here's one of the ones that I found concerning. I'll send this picture to my own, there you go, open this guy. This little piece right here, this worried me. Hi, Brian Kemp, excuse your face. This is one of the things that at first blush was like, shit, this could be a real problem. Any elector of a county or municipality, meaning the person who, the voter, voters are called electors in this particular situation, may challenge the qualifications of any person applying to register to vote, the qualifications of any person applying to register to vote in the county or municipality, and so it has to be 1-to-1. You can't challenge across the county in this part of it anyways, and may challenge the qualifications of any elector of the county or municipality whose name appears on the list of electors, so that's across county lines. Such challenges shall be in writing and shall specify distinctly the grounds of the challenge. That's always been the law. Okay? That didn't change at all. What changed was the underlying part. There shall not be a limit on the number of persons whose qualifications such elector may challenge. So somebody in the state of Georgia could effectively, if they wanted to be a complete asshole, challenge the voting rights of everybody. They'd have to do it one at a time. They'd have to fill out a specific piece of paper for every voter that they wanted to kick off, but they could go through this. They could do this. This applies to anybody, though. So a group of Democratic voters could sit all day between now and, I would guess starting in February of next year, all the way up to like August, and just file piles and piles and piles of paperwork challenging every voter in rural Georgia on the grounds that they don't believe that person is there. How ignores the smart GOP or Elise Stefanik? What makes her smart? We've talked about Elise Stefanik in the past. And I don't know that I've ever been impressed by some of her reasoning. Okay. The next part of it comes, though. Here we go. Throw this in here real quick, and it'll come back up. The same thing. This was the next piece I grabbed from the page, which will be, here we go. The burden shall be on the elector making the challenge to prove that the person being challenged is not qualified to remain on the list of electors. So it defaults to the person who filed. They have to prove that that person is not qualified to vote. So while the first part of that might go, holy shit, these people can just erase people's right to vote. No, they have to, the burden is on the person making the challenge. Now, the Board of Registrars shall have the authority to issue subpoenas for the attendance of witnesses and production of papers, books, materials, blah, 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 by the person whose qualifications are being challenged. They could subpoena that information from those folks, like your address or whatever the hell. I don't know what kind of verification that what element of your own personal books would mean that you're not qualified to vote in that regard, other than your address and your ID or something like that. The party requesting such subpoenas shall be responsible to serve such subpoenas, and if necessary, to enforce the subpoenas by application to Superior Court. Any witness so subpoenaed and after attending shall be allowed and paid the same mileage and fee as allowed and paid witnesses in civil actions at the Superior Court. So the burden is on the state. If some idiot in part of the state, sues to get your voting rights taken away, and they subpoena your documents for that, the state will pay for the copying of it, and then the state will also pay for the mileage if you have to go into court or whatever. They'll pay for your Uber because they have to. So on the one hand, eek, these idiots are going to do all this awful. And on the other hand, they're just basically creating a mess of litigation in the state of Georgia. Because the amount of lawsuits. Let's see. I missed something. Legalize doxing, kind of. That's later on in the bill. I have a better chance of being bitten by a shark while being struck by lightning than finding voter fraud. Yes, this is true. Although there was a lovely story about another Trump voter who got busted for voting illegally multiple times. I think at least twice. You might have tried a third time. So here's one of the good parts of this bill. Now, let's see. That's a big part of, there's no limit now to how many people you can challenge. So basically, they give, the idea is that they give the Lynn Woods of the world the ability to just volume, as long as they want to sit there and type up their complaints, they can challenge as many as they want. But the burden is on them to prove that that person is not there and or is not qualified to vote. It's not on the voter. So like at a certain point, I don't know how in court you have the right to, get this person broomed off without, reasonable foreknowledge. And if that person doesn't deserve to vote in the fucking state, I don't care because they moved. That person's not going to vote there anyways, which brings me to something that I pointed out when I started going down the list of the stories associated with this. So I was following the stories on this. Let's see. This, this kind of started in this process. Let's see if it opens up. Yeah. We got a Republican villager arrested for allegedly casting more than one election ballot. This lady who, was posting Trump memes, by the way. So I'm sure she's a Democrat Biden voter, probably a person of color under a mask. Don't let the blue eyes fool you. Let's see. Joan Halstead, 72, of Village of Palo Alto, was arrested at 6:20 p.m. Monday on the Sumter County warrant, charging her with fraud of casting more than one ballot at any election. She was released after she posted $2,000 bond. She's facing 5 years in jail. So in watching that, again, I will make the case that anywhere they look for voter fraud, they're going to find it, but they're going to find Trump voters who tried to vote more than once. And anywhere that they find, any kind of mass voter fraud where somebody was like harvesting ballots, they're going to find all Trump votes. Sorry. Everywhere you look, you're just going to give Biden more votes. That's how it's going to shake down. And as much as they're like, oh, dear God, they're going to go, so the election is secure. Exactly. They if you try to vote twice, they're going to know and they're going to bust you. Get used to the idea. Yeah, 534 charges against 154 people actually prosecuted in the last 17 years. It's pathetically low. Right, exactly. So in this, I started looking further down the stories, and let's see. Okay, here, this is the one that everybody was like, this is where the 400% idea came from. Okay, so kind of important. This is the story where Raw Story got the story, where Salon pulled this stuff. Georgia election officials rejected absentee ballot applications in the state's municipal elections this month at a rate more than 4 times higher than during the 2020 election cycle. Now, what do you want to bet that the voter turnout was 10 times lower or something along those lines in the municipal elections in Georgia than it was the 2020 presidential election, the largest turnout election in our nation's history? What do you think? Right. So, election officials rejected 4%. 4% of absentee ballot applications ahead of the November 2nd elections, up from less than 1% in 2020. Notice how they don't provide you with the number of human beings who actually voted, the pure number of beings. Because that's how you would know whether this is something to be worried about or not. And so therefore the omission of those things is why I don't bullshit. So according to an analysis by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, well, there we go. Most of the absentee ballot applications rejected last year were duplicates of applications that had been already submitted. That's because they were some people had already asked for them, and then they did a statewide where they sent it out to everybody. So they threw out the second one. Some people filled them out because they thought they had to fill out the new one. They just rejected one of them. The person got their ballot from the one they originally filled out. Who gives a fuck? And they voted. All right. Often because voting groups, that's Dem get out the vote groups, or local governments sent out multiple forms to voters. All of those voters voted. So, New Georgia Law SB 202 requires absentee ballot applications to be submitted at least 11 days before the election. It used to be 5 days, now it's 11. You have 11 days for absentee ballot applications. That's the by mail part. You can still vote early. That doesn't change. You can still go in, get your ballot, and vote. But if you want it mailed to you and mailed back, it's now 11 days instead of 5. While the previous deadline was the Friday before Election Day, data shows that 52% of the rejected applications were denied because they were submitted too late under the new law. Okay, that means some people didn't know that the timing had changed. That's what that means. Another 15% were rejected because of missing or incorrect ID information under the new law. This is all stuff, it's good to know this stuff now. These are all not people of color, by the way. This is statewide. There's a lot of hicks out there who are don't know the rules as well by volume. There's more of those folks. Do you think Democrats are not going to know this by 2022 and work this out? Please. So here's this is what voter suppression looked like, charged Senator Michelle Au, a Democrat. Though full voter file data will not be released by the state until next year, 19% of the people who requested an absentee ballot did not submit one before the polls opened on Election Day. 19%. Who requested an absentee ballot did not submit one before the polls opened on Election Day. You wouldn't even be able to do that under the old 5-day rule. That's 20% of the fucking people we're talking about. Now, how many people are we talking about? How many people? Anybody see anything? Anybody? Anybody see a number? 20% of what? How many by volume? Individuals. Do you see a number there? No, you don't. Is that an accident? No, it is not. This is a panic paper. According to the New Georgia Project Action Fund, a voting rights group, based on 2020 trends, again, this is the same bullshit I call Giuliani and those crowd on, based on 2020 trends, because they based their 2020 predictions on previous trends from like 2016, even though none of those happened during a fucking pandemic. The group estimates that 13% of people who requested an absentee ballot ended up not voting at all this year, nearly double the 2020 rate. %13 of the people who requested an absentee ballot ended up voting not voting at all this year. Nearly double. Yes, that's just true in off-year elections for, like in 2022, it's going to be down from 2020. Duh. At least that amount. Data shows that voter suppression laws work as intended, tweeted former Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. Georgia Republicans passed the law after Joe Biden carried the state last November, and Democrats won the state. This is true. Time-wise, time moves forward. A record 1.3 million Georgia voters cast absentee ballots in the 2020 election, with 2/3 of them voting for President Joe Biden. The absentee ballots were 2/3. So 1/3 of them were for Trump. Right, okay. 1.3 million. A third of them voted for Trump. 2/3 voted for Biden. Okay. The law also restricts ballot drop boxes. Now, oh dear God. Does it? Or does it return it back to the rule that was pre-pandemic? Do you think anybody read what it says? The rule has been put back, and this is, by the way, this is in their thing. And the 11-day election, 11-day deadline, the 11-day election is too far in advance of election day to adequately serve voters. This is who oversees elections in Georgia's Heard County, saying in an affidavit supporting a challenge to the law. So these are the lawsuits that I've told you guys are being filed everywhere. And many of them will go through. But a voter rights advocate group is saying actually that a lot of people that get it later, their ballots aren't received in time, or they wait too long to mail them back in. So they don't. It splits the vote as far as the value of it. Okay. Crucial swing state voted by 12,000 votes. Now every vote counts in this, and believe me, they're trying to chip away as much as possible. But the way it was before, you almost were setting up voters to fail. CEO of National Vote at Home Institute. It's actually a best practice to cut it off so the voters are actually receiving the ballots enough time to get it back. She's the one who's saying that it's actually better to have the date at 11 days beforehand. That if you want people to vote from home, you should have the deadline be before that, because it sets up voters to fail when they get them too late, too close to the date themselves. They get confused about whether they have to walk them in or not, and then they just don't. So, and this is since we know that black voters in Georgia were more likely to request absentee ballots than white voters in 2018, 2020, and January 5th runoff, restrictions to voting by mail clearly impact those voters in disproportionate rate, Conacher said in a statement to Salon. In a crucial swing state, and by the way, while this was true because of their party affiliation in 2020 specifically, the 2018 thing, notice it was in 2016. And 2020 and January 5th both happened during the pandemic. 2018 was an uptick in voters in general. And so you had a volume issue. That more Democrats came out to vote. 2018 was a Democrat-leaning election. So where's the other one? I know I'm boring the shit out of you guys now with this, but let's see. Feature law, the side of the election integrity, crime, and thing. Christian on the first like Justice Department, preservation. There's a lot of pushback against this. If Georgia, let's see. If Georgia had still been covered by the pre-clearance requirement, Garland said, it is likely that SB 202 would have never taken effect. This is true because it's gacked up with a bunch of shit that they're going to challenge, and some of it will get thrown out and some of it will stay. And there's a bunch of provisions in the bill that allow for parts of it to be tossed out while keeping the rest of it. That's the trick of SB 202. So let's look at, real quick. And this is just about kind of like what to look towards when you're maybe being led around by the nose and made to just shit your pants with fear every time they tell something. All right. Georgia voting law drives rejections of absentee requests made too late. So this is the one that says that this is the main reason. After the deadline, 708 of those were rejected. 708 were rejected. The count overall, this is how many. This isn't percentage, this is the physical number, the actual number. 700 were rejected because they came in after the deadline. That's the majority of them. Democrats in 2022 will know when the date is. Missing ID, 208. Ineligible or incorrect, 119. Invalid form, signatures, yada, yada. These are from the municipals. There's 208 of those, 119, 118, 105, 166, and miscellaneous was 38. Okay. So, is it down here? Let's see. Missing or incorrect ID information accounted for 15% of denied ballot requests. Okay, 15% of these as 208 people were denied because they had missing or incorrect 208 people. 208. 56% of them might be people of color because they came from Atlanta proper. The rest of them are all rural whites. And still, neither one are making a big, taking a big chunk out of this. All right. So I know I'm hammering this point, but I want to show you one last thing that particularly I found telling and very important. Remember how I was saying, and I've talked about this on John's show, about how once Democrats, once the Republicans set a rule, the best thing that Democrats can do is to push for total adherence to those laws so that they are threading that needle as hard as it is and put resources into these swing states that absolutely fine-tune what they need for their voters. Nothing will stop, nothing legally can stop them from doing this. And this is where Democrats are absolutely doing this. This is like Stacey Abrams' win in this circumstance. It is some of the good work that they've been doing down there that they don't get credit for. But I want to show you something about this. Okay, here it is. This was the whole big thing. Voter ID is meant to be a racist bulwark against people of color voting. That said, how many people is that? Now, Democrats have been busting their ass making sure that because this has been a creeping law for a long time, and most people have it. Most people who are old enough to vote, and aren't 99, have a current driver's license or a state ID or some equivalent because they need it for other stuff. And the older folks tend to vote Republican anyways, so some of these voter ID laws happen to hurt longstanding Republicans, like Reagan voting Republicans that are still around, more than anybody else. But check this out. Okay, so this was related. They talk about how the percentage, right? 13%. We saw this. This is a thing. You're supposed to voter ID. They're trying to stop people, blah, blah, blah. Okay, how effective are they, though? So we scroll down here. Remember what I tell you about paragraph 3? Okay, in this one, let's see, here it is. The Atlanta Journal obtained an updated list of voters without ID numbers, matched their registrations from the Secretary of State's office through Georgia Open Records Act. Okay. You got that. Okay. The number of voters who didn't have an ID number on file decreased from 272,000 to 154,000 because the Georgia Secretary of State's office recently updated registration records to include more ID numbers from the Department of Driver Services. So motor voter kicked in, and a lot of people that weren't registered to vote are now automatically registered to vote because they chose to. They left them out in 2016 is one of the reasons why Republicans have had a hold on this. Part of the 202 law and previous laws in Georgia allow for this kind of thing. Now, way down here at the bottom of the thing, Senate Bill 202, here we go. This part. The 154,411 Georgians without ID numbers on file are disproportionately black voters, according to an AJC comparison to the state's voter registration and ID list. Black voters make up 58% of those who lack ID linked to their registrations, while accounting for 30% of the state's registered voters. So they're 18% higher within that subgroup to not have their IDs in order. Now, they are also going to be targeted by Democratic activists to make sure that that is remedied in upcoming elections. We have people on the ground, Democrats have people on the ground making sure you fix this. Republicans don't. They are not bothering with this outreach. And what you're going to see over the next 4 years is that number flip-flop. That the number of rural whites without a proper ID, percentage-wise, while this number drops to like 46,000 or some shit, is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. The percentage is going to get smaller and smaller, and it's going to get higher amongst white people. This is okay. Many voters who don't have ID numbers on file also have never cast a ballot. Now, this is crucial. About 93,000 of the registered voters without an ID number have no record of ever voting in Georgia, according to state election data. 90,000 never vote. Now, why would that be? That would be because Democrats are doing get out the vote shit like crazy. And they are registering people to vote hand over fist. And a bunch of those people don't vote because they filled out the form, but they weren't all that interested. But they've been asked 10 times, so they finally did it. That's it. How many of the 93,000 are 58% people of color, quote unquote, that didn't vote at all, or moved and therefore never voted, or filled out their form and then left? And this goes back to what I was talking to you guys about at the beginning of this show, this morning's conversation, is that people are telling you that statistically significant things, and they're not following it up with the material number. Sometimes they're doing it to manipulate you for negative reasons. And sometimes they think that unless they scare the living shit out of you, you're not going to do anything. And therefore, the other side will win because you won't think the threat is big enough until you're already a boiled frog. So from this 154,000 people out of, by the way, there are 7.3 million, let's see, there were 1.3 million absentee ballots cast in last year's election. Of those, 64,000 approximately, 61,000 are people who may or may not have been able to vote absentee based on their application being rejected. Whether they filled out another one or not is not in here. But 61,000 people in that across the state had their absentee or had a didn't have an ID. 93,000 of those folks, of the other folks, did not vote at all. Of the 61,000, a bunch of those folks did vote because they had another form or they did it in person or what have you. They had other remedies that are in the law. But this is the part that stuck out to me in this. Now, remember what got us here. Remember what got us here. This title. So if you wonder why I am not panicked about these kind of things, and I think that focus and solving the actual problems in front of us, not the imaginary ones, or the concocted ones, is the solution, and why I think that the regular progress that Democratic get out the vote campaigns are going to make over time are going to solve for a lot of these issues, no matter how many roadblocks they try to throw up. If you wonder where I get that from, it's because I go 4 articles deep in this shit and recognize that that while they're trying to make a threat out of this stuff, most of the laws, most of SB 202 has nothing to do with voters of color. Has nothing to do with denying, voters of color the ability to vote, or even flip-flopping the electors in places like there's seemingly because they can switch the superintendent with there's all these subcategories of what they have to establish before they can do this, but swap them out and therefore put in new electors that will, turn Georgia red when it was clearly blue, those kind of things. That those things will be challenged in court and will never survive. They're just not going to. I'm telling you, in the next 6 to 8 months, there's going to be parts of these laws that are just going to be thrown out. I hope you're tight, Hal. I am. I think you meant right, but either one works. Stargal, that's my favorite typo of the day. I hope you're tight, Hal. Sorry. So let me show you what I mean. and then I know I'm hammering on this morning, but it's so crucial to, I don't want you guys to be, I honestly want you guys to feel motivated to work and, yeah, exactly.
Moon River.
I want you guys to feel motivated to make sure that people have the right to vote and that everybody who legally is allowed to vote can vote and all those kind of things, without thinking that the problem is overwhelming and out of your control, because part of these things, it ends up being like a push poll, or what Trump, whined about, like suppression polls, that 117% one in Wisconsin, which nobody took seriously. He was like, this is the way, oh dear, darling, well, I don't even know why we should bother to vote if he's down by 17. Darling, the wind isn't blowing, we can't watch TV. Remember all that bullshit? So one of the things that they do is to make you think that that the challenge they're putting forward, their defensive line that they're putting forward, is just far too strong. Just it's impossible. You'll never beat it. Meanwhile, buried in the bill is a change of this one, which is really good and came about because these assholes know that some of their stuff that they're trying to do is racist and will be perceived as such. So they're laying ground cover. This part will not be repealed. This part will stay. And this part says, if at the previous general election, a precinct contained more than 2,000 voters, and if electors desiring to vote on the day of the election had to wait in line for more than 1 hour before checking in to vote, the superintendent shall either reduce the size of such precinct so that it shall contain not more than 2,000 electors, in accordance with the procedures described by the chapter of this division, alteration and consolidation of precincts no later than 60 days before the next general election, or provide additional voting equipment or poll workers or both before the next general election. For administrating this code section, the chief manager of a precinct which contained more than 2,000 electors at the previous general election shall submit a report thereof to the superintendent of the reported time from entering the line to checking in to vote. So there's going to be somebody according to this new law, somebody that goes down there and checks how long it takes in a general election for people to vote. And if it's more than an hour, by the next election, they have to provide more poll workers, more machines, or both. Or they have to reduce the size of the area. Let's say it's more because of population growth. You had more people turning 18 in this area, so they get to have a bigger precinct. And they get 60 days notice thereof, and people will be able to tell. And there's going to be apps that Democrats will have to remind everybody where their precinct is. You'll be able to look it up like that. They are so fighting yesterday's battle on so many of these things. So, such wait time shall be measured no fewer than 3 different times throughout the day, in the morning, midday, and prior to the close of polls. So with that crush at the end of the day, like they can't measure it in the morning when it's light and go, yeah, you can fucking get in, it's not a problem. And then later on in the day when people get off work, the lines get longer and people have to give up. They have to measure it 3 times during the day. And if it's more than an hour wait, they have to provide more machines and more poll workers, or they have to shrink the size of the precinct and either add another precinct or grow the smaller one and move people over so you guys go vote over this place so that you have more places. I'm sorry. That's a great thing. And that is not going anywhere. That's stick to your ribs law right now. Will there be an next election? Yeah, there will be. And if they make people wait in 2022 longer than an hour in any precinct in Georgia, they will be provided with more machines equal to the 2,000 people who are trying to vote that day, or more or less, depending on whether or not they bifurcate one of these places. They got 2,000, let's say they have 2,500 people trying to vote in a particular precinct, and 2,000 in the next one over. They create a sub-precinct and another location that can handle up to 2,000 voters. And so they'll bifurcate or trifurcate those three areas into, 1,200 apiece. More than likely based on how close it is to your house. It will be supplied for the next election if it's more than an hour. Before, they had 3, 5, and 7 hour lines. They were measuring in the morning and not providing anything. So it got worse and worse in high population districts and lighter in others. Now in 2022, almost nothing will fit this measurement. They're counting on that. But in 2024, it abso-fucking-lutely will. And if they try to choke point these places and deny people voting machines in these areas, they all but guarantee an easier precinct experience for all the voters in those areas in the presidential election the next time around. Could the Republicans use this for gerrymandering? No, the gerrymandering is done through census. Let's see. Oh, and then this was the other one. This is related to an article I looked at earlier, and this will be the last one where I know I'm harping on this, but you guys got to understand that my optimism and my desire to fight the good fight and that progress is being made, because I think part of what happens is people get demoralized and then they give up. It's like, God damn it, these laws and blah, blah, blah. The way people talk about it in these broad strokes makes it sound like you can't do anything about it and you've already lost. And then people tend to give up. And I'm not going to let that happen. And a lot of a lot of these work in reverse. A lot of these laws are going to affect, like I said, rural whites in Georgia far worse than black people in cities, which was the target initially. Because the get out the vote campaign in cities, especially in places in urban centers like Atlanta, is way easier than driving out in the fucking sticks and making sure some hillbilly has a brand new state ID. And Republicans are going to find this out the hard way, and they're going to start rescinding some of this shit because they lose. I mean, people get out over their skis all the fucking time, and they think they come up with a solution that's going to guarantee their win, and then they end up shooting themselves in the foot. And this is exactly what's happening to rural whites in a lot of these redneck states. That's honest to God. Setting these rules in place in Kentucky, for example, would not affect black people in Louisville and Lexington per se. They're going to fuck up Appalachia, though. They're going to screw everybody who's trying to vote in Pikesville. So that's the part. Watch for that blowback. Because again, activists of all sorts always get out over their skis. They're high on their own supply. They think it's all going to work their way. They can't imagine their solution not working. And a shit ton of this stuff that they put in these laws is about convincing Trump voters to go back to voting. It's all just fart air. It means nothing. We fixed all the stuff from 2020, so it's okay to vote. That they're talking to their own voters with these laws. There's nothing to do. Believe me, Democrats are aware of what the legal needs of people of color in Georgia are going to be, and they're going to be busting their ass to make sure that they all meet those requirements. And they're going to, even if they can't hand out water to line people, you don't think a block away they're going to be, hey, we're not telling you who to vote for, but here, have a bottle of water because it's a long line. They're trying to fuck you this year. Next year, they won't be able to because the law means that they get more than an hour is against the law. So this is the part that I know I keep saying. This is my Midwestern goodbye on all these things. This was part of the article that I was reading before. In all, remember that 4% that we saw? This part right here, the 4% of absentee ballots that was 400%, right? 400%. Guys, it's up 400%. Jesus God, it's up 400% of a, smaller absolute number, and it's the same number of people who try to vote by mail every time, and same people have squiggly signatures and whatever. Anyways, way more people voted by mail last time, and so therefore the people who functionally were able to vote by mail and had all their ducks in a row was way higher, and so the percentage of rejections is way lower. Never mind that. 400%. In all, election officials rejected 4% of absentee ballot requests for this year's municipal elections on November 2nd, according to public voting records analyzed by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. There were 1,362 rejected absentee ballot applications out of 35,312 submitted. 1,352. How many of you believe that what the fuck? Let's see. Hold on real quick. How many of you believe? Let's see. Let's look up the population of Georgia. What is it about? Yeah, here you go. 10,000 people. Something like 7,000 registered voters. Most voted in person in the last election. 1.3 million voted in 2020 absentee. Because they specifically call mail-in voting absentee, whereas Wisconsin, everything that isn't on election day, if you early vote, that's absentee voting. It's all mail-in voting / absentee. They just use the same fucking word for everything. There's 10,000 people in Georgia. 10 million. There's 7 million registered voters approximately. Of those, 1,362 absentee ballot applications out of 35,000 were rejected this year. Now, how many people think that there were 35,000 absentee ballots submitted in 2020? See what I'm getting at? You see what I'm saying? You are being herded. And in many ways, some of the people who are trying to scare the crap out of you mean well. They don't think that you will worry enough, so they try to get you to worry too much. It's like, yes, 4% equals 400% when 1% was the previous year. That's exactly right, Kaling. I'm just going to call you Clink from now on. Is that okay? But I won't call you Colonel. You get me? And a lot of, CDC does this, NIH does this, and they mean well. Most people will default to system 2 thinking, be lazy about it, and not go the extra mile. So a lot of the voters' rights groups and civil rights groups and the like are going to try and scare the living shit out of you, not because they're trying to lie to you specifically, but because unless they show you the worst case scenario, you're not going to do anything. That's what they think. Dad, you say figures lie and liars figure. Yeah. So none of my audience, I don't think, needs to be manipulated like this. And I think as we increasingly, I get CDC doing it, they deal with some very bad diseases. Yes, I agree. But it's a system that has spread across a lot of different issues. And in the realm of like civil rights and in the realm of voting rights, you have some people with a lot of personal attention on the issue who can't see that solutions are happening all around them because they can't afford to in their own mind, because what they're dealing with is so life and death. So YouTube might be having an issue. Oh, good. K-Link, great. Okay. Well, then that's what I'll keep doing. So, and again, that's an increase from less than 1% of absentee ballot applications rejected in last year's general election. Now, if you'll notice, when they say 4%, they show you what 4% is. 1,362 out of 35,312. When they say that's an increase from less than 1% of absentee ballot applications rejected in last year's election, they do not tell you the base number. Do you see? Do you see? They don't. And it's crucial that you know that, because you're only the best you when you can breathe deep and deal with a real challenge that's in front of you, not the challenge you're being fed. Because what you will do is come up with the wrong solution to the problem that's in front of you. You will assume that this is the cause, therefore we must look for a solution that deals with this cause. And if that's not the cause, then you are chasing your tail. Absolutely 250, Comb. I'm glad to do it. All right, now we can just chit-chat. I've been lecturing for 90 fucking minutes about this stuff. The other thing is, and this is more on a personal level, we can dump this part of it and I'll just go back to here. The other thing that I want you guys to recognize is that and this applies to a lot of stuff. This isn't just sort of the politics or stories of politics. And by the way, that should participate, this like percentage speak should apply across the board to a lot of things you see in the news or that you're presented with in your life. Because again, I'm not just talking about this in terms of the Georgia law. It's just a great example of how, statistics, polling, and the like can be used to manipulate you into thinking you're wrong or that you should be focused on something else than the problem that you're aware of, or that you think, it seems to me this is the real problem. You go, no, statistically it's this. What's your proof? Well, this big percentage number. What's the absolute number? Well, it's actually this big. Well, then maybe that's not the cause of all the individuals that are experiencing this, right? So the same thing applies when you want to start a business, or you're looking at the stock market, or a bunch of different stuff. How you sound angry again today? I'm not really. This is something that gets me wound up. But I want you guys, more than anything, both in terms of how you digest news and stories, especially in your social media feed, because this is where this gets used the most. How you're great to listen to while making my Christmas cards. You're soothing with watercoloring. Oh, thanks. I try. I think some of Hal's chin whiskers are white. Yeah, of course they are. My beard is largely white at this point. It's salt and pepper, but yeah. I'm a man who's been through a lot. I'm not ashamed of any of the grays I have, whether I keep them or not. Hal's explanations and lack of doom calms me. And that, my dear Candy, is exactly the point. Because I feel like my job these days is to be a doom slayer. If I have an enemy in this world, it's the doomsday preppers across the philosophical and political spectrum. What do I think of Marcus Aurelius? Well, I do know that Hannibal Lecter liked him a lot. But I don't hold that against them. And I do believe in stoicism as a functional philosophy. But man, the number of people who are always Hal is Doom. Yes, I am the Doom Slayer. Anybody who is crying doom, end of the world. I'm piss off. I'm not buying it. I'm not even engaging in this ridiculousness keeps you from solving the problem. I mean, can you imagine being in the Donner Party or any other group and being the guy who goes, you know what, we should just stop walking. In any situation, like any group of people who in their life have been confronted with a difficult circumstance. Anybody who stands up and cries doom, the end of the world, is just responsible for anyone who dies or is damaged by the giving up. Because if indeed doom exists, it doesn't need any help from you. It's gonna happen. So in the immortal words of Nick Fury, until the world ends, we will act as if we will behave. I think he said act as if, but we will act as if it intends to spin on. The Donald Party, right? Mm-hmm. So I know, and there's a couple of folks, bless their hearts, on our side of the aisle that think the only way they can motivate you to do the normal work of citizenry and get out the vote and drive somebody to the polls with you and tell your friends in swing states to get vote is not by telling you to do that and knowing that by volume that will work out because that's the way it's headed. It is only by telling you that every white person you see is a white supremacist, the entire system is based on white supremacy, that the end of the world is coming, and that every voter law that these assholes put up is going to destroy voting as we know it, and democracy is dead. And they think that unless you think of it in those terms, you're not going to be motivated to do anything. Because although they believe you are a good person with the same morals and beliefs that they have, you're also a lazy bastard. They believe you are lazy and unmotivated. Do not borrow trouble. Exactly, Stargal. Pretenditarians. Never make it. We're all going to die. It's the end of the world. I use this weekly to brighten my day. Most likely, the population will continue to grow, the environment will continue to decline, and eventually the poor people rise up and claim what's theirs. No, not most likely at all. They've been saying that for hundreds of years, too. Go read Marx. He was convinced that's how it would work out. And it doesn't. Even the French Revolution didn't turn out that way. A lot of the people who rose up during the French Revolution became as draconian and evil in the way they carried out their democratic ideals as the very people that they murdered. But we romanticize some of those things because they stand out in history. I am lazy and unmotivated. Well, at least you know that. And knowing is half the battle. Actually, thanks to inflation, knowing is now 1/3 of the battle. Tired of the right exploiting fear for profit? Well, me too, but our side does it as well. You know, with equal effect. Because and by the way, that's not their fault, that's our fault. As long as you are motivated by fear, people will know that that is the best tool to motivate you with. Once that stops working, they will shift. It's crucial. All world population growth from now to 2100 will be from people living longer, not from more kids, which is plateaued. That's true, Peter. Hal realizes he's screaming at the wall. No. I'm speaking into a camera, and I'm seeing it reflected in the chat that you guys hear what I'm saying, and you're comprehending it. Even if it doesn't overwhelm your normal thought form that you operate in, it will be a part of your thinking from now on, because that's how hypnotism works. So, I need to run to the grocery and get some kitty litter, because we're almost out, and that's not something you want to run out of, kids. And so I'm gonna sign off now, and I will see you guys for the regular show this afternoon at 3 o'clock. And I would like you, I'd like to make a request that over the, just between now and then. Yeah, I'm doing the litter now. It's just me and Danzig, right? CSL. I do the litter often, by the way. Yeah. That I want you don't have to take everything I say as rote, and you certainly are welcome to your own panic attacks. I will never interrupt your whatever psychological or biochemical bump you get from being afraid and doom scrolling. But I will say this. I will not participate in it with you, because that will be I have staked out a position in people's lives and in people's understanding for myself that is quite different from a lot of human beings you will see on these platforms. I am proud to say. And it's going to be to constantly remind you that folks want to manipulate you for clicks and money. And while I need those clicks and money participating in that kind of behavior, I'm just not going to do it. And the more I see people online sort of printing money that way, like I showed you Russell Brand's thumbnails, the more I am increasingly disgusted by that behavior. And I'm just not going to do it. I know it costs me money. I know it costs me a livelihood. I know it limits the growth that I have on these platforms. There's a reason why I don't have the Hassan Abi money, because I am not calling for blood in the streets and saying that the world needs to be destroyed so therefore we can build it again. And I'm not going to, because it's bullshit. It's a lie. And it's manipulative and it's cruel. And I will not participate in that. Not at all. Just get used to the idea. So, bless you guys. Thanks for hanging out in the morning. These morning shows are nice because it gives me a chance to get some stuff off my chest that's on a bigger scale than what we have time for when when I'm joking between sentences on some of these videos we play in the afternoon. But this is just a thought form I just don't see a lot of people doing. And it's a shame, because it's crucial to democracy, and it's crucial to getting along with your future humans, and it's crucial to diversity. Because again, diversity is not just finding someone who's a different color than you that already sounds like you. So, there you go. Anyways, much love. I should probably put I got to do the fade out music on this so I can get walking. But that's, I have hashtag Doomslayer. I'm always gonna tap down people's fear so that they can, if you have concern about something, that concern should not overwhelm your ability to deal with that something. If it is, that's because someone is fucking with you. All right. I will see if we will better the audio later this afternoon, or if that's just an issue of YouTube this morning. If it is, I will grab the recorded version off of Restream and upload that, because that will be a pure version, just in case you missed anything. So, anyways, I appreciate you guys showing up. I appreciate the support. Don't forget to subscribe on Twitch, twitch.tv/HalSparks. Spread the show around. If you think anybody needs to hear this version of events, pass this on. Today's episode, this morning show. So, because I'm amazed at how people don't fit this into their thing. Okay, I'm out. I'll see you later.
That was really cool, by the way.
Sportos, motorheads, geeks, sluts, bloods, wastoids, dweebies, dickheads. They all adore him. They think he's a righteous dude.
I never thought anybody could forget so much so fast without a severe blow to the head.
Shut up and never say anything again as long as you live.
Something strange happened to me this morning.
Was it a dream where you see yourself standing in sort of sun god robes on a pyramid with 1,000 naked women screaming and throwing little pickles at you?
No.
Why am I the only person that has that dream?
Well, it's a well-known fact, Sonny Jim, that there's a secret society of the 5 wealthiest people in the world, known as the Pentaverate, who run everything in the world, including the newspapers, and meet tri-annually at a secret country mansion in Colorado known as the Meadows.
So who's in this Pentaverate?
The Queen, the Vatican, the Gettys, the Rothschilds, and Colonel Sanders before he went tits up. Did you have shade?
I was thinking of the immortal words of Socrates, who said,
You are physically repulsive, intellectually retarded, vulgar, insensitive, selfish, stupid. You have no taste, a lousy sense of humor, and you smell.
He's you real nice. If I didn't have puke breath, I'd kiss you.
Dr. Evil. Dr. Evil.
It's not Irish. It's not English.
Oh, yeah. Fair. What is my kindness for the horses? You know,
It's just pikey.
Groovy.
I'm just a happy camper.
Just follow the money.
You're not hearing what I'm saying.
Oh, that's okay, Doc, because you're not saying what I'm hearing.
How, in the name of Zeus's butthole, did you get out of your cell?
You stay classy, San Diego.